Welcome to another episode of Home Sweet Home. My name is Rod McCall.
And my name is Bryce Runge.
So, Bryce,
Yes.
how you doing today?
I'm fine.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Doing pretty good? Life treating you okay?
God is good, man. All the time.
Yeah? I wouldn't say no if, like I got a check from Ed McMahon or something like that.
You got a check from Ed McMahon?
No, I'm saying it'd be nice if it did, though.
Is he still alive?
Okay, it'd be nice if I got a Publisher Clearinghouse check.
Dude, that's funny you say that. I don't think my mom listens to this. She doesn't even know how to turn her phone on. So we're good. She has been doing Publishers PCH, right? Publishers Clearinghouse for, I kid you not, 50-something years.
Really?
And she will never not let you know that they haven't come yet. I got a measly check for $12 for something, and they haven't shown up to I've been playing this for 50-something years, or doing this, and blah, blah. I'm like, all right. Did you know that there was a family in Prosper that won it?
No.
I swear to you. If I'm lying, I'm dying.
Okay.
There was.
So somebody here in North Texas wins the Publisher Clearinghouse sweepstakes.
And I do think that they needed it.
Okay. Well, good.
Yeah. I do believe that. But I you said that.
Okay.
I don't even, what are we talking about?
Well, I don't know. Nothing. That was just, you're talking about being good, being okay, and I'm going, well, I could do better. But anyway.
Do you think money is going to solve all of your problems, Rod?
No, not at all. But it would be nice to find out just how much.
Me too.
But, sometimes money can be very devastating.
Yeah.
And in the first marriage, we chased money. I mean, we've talked about that before.
Yeah.
And I chased the almighty dollar. And I forgot what was important. And so, and I was thinking about that as I was reading this blog. And it kind of struck me as, okay, I may have participated in the destruction of my relationship. And it got me thinking. And then I read, like I say, this article popped up, and it was talking about how we kind of, the things we do to sabotage our own relationships.
Yeah.
With friends, romantic partners, co-workers, neighbors, you name it. Because we have all kinds of relationships, different levels of relationships with different folks. And it got me thinking, well, what is my part? What am I doing to foster relationships? But even worse, what am I doing that sabotages and destroys relationships with people that I probably would be better off not doing?
Yeah.
And so it got me thinking. And so I thought, well, maybe that's where I was going today, is we could talk about this.
Okay.
Because the article's written by a psychologist. Her name, I cannot pronounce her last name, but her first name is Annie, so we'll call her Dr. Annie T.
Okay.
Because I do not want to mispronounce it.
Don't do that.
Because it's
rude.
It's not one I'm familiar with, so we'll just call her Dr. Annie T.
Do you not call these doctors and be like, hey, how do you pronounce your name? I'm going to use your article for our one of the top producing podcasts in the world.
I could, but then, you got licensing and legal issues. And, I figure, what you don't know don't hurt you.
That's right. That is right.
Okay, maybe that's the wrong approach to have, and I might.
It's always better. You could always ask for forgiveness, right? Afterwards.
Sure.
Right.
So anyway, so the article does a real solid look at the things that maybe we do, whether intentional or unintentional, that may, again, sabotage a relationship that we have. One that maybe you would like to keep, and maybe you're kind of going through this and you don't realize what you're doing.
Yeah.
Or maybe you realize what you're doing, but you don't know how to stop yourself. And so you wind up kind of constantly going through the exact same kinds of emotions again and again and again.
Yeah.
So, I don't know. I don't know if that rings a bell with you or not.
No, it did. It does. It definitely does. I'm just I got lost in thinking about that. So yes, it absolutely does, because I mean, you just said multiple things right there in that one sentence, because a lot of times we ruin relationships because, one, we jump from one to the next without healing, without reflecting, without trying to get better and owning your part, because you had a part in it.
Mm-hmm. Oh, amen.
Okay, it's not just the other person's fault, quote. Like it takes two to fight. It takes two. And so I think that I've learned through my marriage that not dealing with certain things, they would pop up. And I had to recognize that, because, I don't want that in this marriage. So it needs to go. It needs to go and never come again. So I had to deal with that. I had to, one, recognize it, and I had to realize that it's not Suzanne's fault. It's not okay for her to pay the price for something that happened in a different relationship, and I wasn't man enough and responsible enough to deal with it.
Sure.
And so, you said a lot, and I think a lot of relations that happens to so many people.
Well, and that's,
and then they have divorced again. Oh, I'm on my 10th marriage. And we're talking about, I'm talking specific relationships in general. They can't figure it out, and then no one's told them, hey, you're the common denominator in the failure of relationships. When are you going to recognize it?
Yeah. Eric's mother had a variety of issues. Excuse me. When we met.
Yeah.
And we were living back in Kansas, and she was having issues with friends. And then we moved to Pennsylvania, and suddenly she starts having the exact same problems, the exact same issues with her friends. And then we move here to Texas, and, because we moved from Kansas to Pennsylvania, and then from Pennsylvania down here. And when we're down here, lo and behold, she starts having the exact same kinds of problems, the exact same kinds of issues. And you're right. She was the common denominator, but she refused to admit that. And I was unwilling to explore because I was afraid of what I would find. So better to bury my head in the sand than to address it. But I don't think I do that now.
Yeah.
But Dr. Annie T, she says that at the core of all self-sabotaging behaviors, she says that you kind of find your own fears. Your fear of being abandoned. Your fear of not feeling like you're good enough. Your fear of negative, your struggle with self-identity and low self-esteem.
Yeah.
And when you suffer from these, then how much of that influences then how we, I don't know that it's intentional, but the result is still the same. We wind up destroying, our friendships, our relationships with people. Because you and I have talked about how relationships make life worth living.
Right.
And so, anyway, she makes a very interesting argument that if you kind of start looking at these and peel back, where are these feelings coming from? A lot of times they result from trauma and childhood trauma, or stuff like that. And we'll call childhood trauma all the way up to 18.
Yeah.
But these are trauma responses.
Yeah.
And that it is, your body, your mind's way of self-protection.
Mm-hmm.
Because you know what? Like you and I have talked about, we ain't getting divorced again.
Yeah.
But we take a different approach to we're not going to get divorced again.
Mm-hmm.
Where, the Dr. Andy T is saying that when we engage in these sabotaging behaviors, that we are, well, I'm going to hurt you before you hurt me.
Mm-hmm.
And so, anyway, so here's where she kind of breaks it into different things. And she says, one of the reasons that we do this is that unresolved trauma. Something happened somewhere in our lives. Maybe we had an abusive parent, or maybe we had a narcissistic parent. Maybe there, because again, abuse doesn't have to be physical or sexual. It can be emotional.
Yeah.
Because you can have emotional abuse, you can have emotional neglect, and both of those can play huge into, negative feelings of self-worth, your self-esteem, your self-identity. And so if you, as a kid, you go through this, you live through this, well, you basically develop these maladaptive emotional responses. And so, again, you kind of, the self-defeating behavior of, well, I'm going to protect myself.
Yeah.
And so as we get older, as we move from, being a kid, being a teenager, growing up, becoming more, of an adult and engaging in adult type relationships, these feelings, that lack of self-worth, the feeling of abandonment, keeps crashing into these maladaptive strategies.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's really important, because I think a lot of people are suffering from trauma that they're unaware of.
Okay.
And it comes out and they don't know. They just, they're all not okay, those things, right? And we could heal from them. I think the one that really just gets people just messed up is the emotional abuse, because you and I both know that, it's a battlefield in our mind. And, they're all just the physical abuse, living with a narcissistic parent or whatever, right? The emotionally neglected or emotionally abused, not okay. We could heal, but we have to recognize, or get help to help recognize. For me, I've realized that, if we're not operating on the same page, I tend to go silent mode.
Okay.
And then I have this aura that comes off me that's not okay. And I think that comes from a lot of childhood things. It also comes from a previous relationship thing. And I have to recognize that, okay, well, XYZ happened here in this relationship or as a child. So, that childhood trauma, trauma in general.
Sure.
It trauma induced, those things have a massive impact on people.
Well, and I don't think we fully appreciate that. I mean, when you're growing up, okay, I grew up in the family that I did, and you don't realize that other families don't grow up exactly like yours until you get a lot older, until you start having maybe a family of your own.
Yeah. And
I used to feel about my family a certain way, and now I've come to that, we were just average, that there was nothing really special. In fact, in many ways, I felt like maybe, we were low income and, grew up on the wrong side of the tracks and that, but I've come to understand that maybe, no, there's no maybe. I've come to understand that was not the right right view or image. That we grew up in a decent middle class neighborhood, in a middle class community with middle class family value, parents and values, And I grew up in a family that I'm going, holy crap, I am so blessed and lucky to have had.
Right.
Because working with kids as I have for the last 20 years, I'm going, oh my God, some of your moms and dads, I just want to take out behind the woodshed and beat the crap out of. Say, love your children, please.
Right.
Stop, behaving like a bunch of knuckleheads.
Right.
Or jackwagons. Which, by the way, I'll have to tell you off air another funny story about that. But anyway,
Nice.
So
Can't wait.
Because what they're saying here is that you grow up in this environment, you don't know any different.
Right.
And so if you're in a healthy environment, okay, you grow into the person that you're supposed to become. But you don't realize that that's what's supposed to happen. Yet when you're in a maladaptive family with mom or dad having their own issues,
right,
and you wind up being a recipient of their negative attention because of this, well, then you grow up in this family dynamic that doesn't allow you to grow and become into the person you're supposed to.
Right.
And so as a consequence, you develop these unhealthy, what will become unhealthy character traits,
right,
that you assume, this is the way all families live. This is the way all adults treat children, that adults treat each other. So if I got to live like this.
Right.
And so it creates, we kind of, by living these maladaptive behaviors, we're sabotaging our own happiness. We're destroying any potential positive, healthy relationships that we could have with others.
Yeah.
And we're going, I'm going to let you in till this point, and then boom, I'm going to kick you out because I'm going to hurt you before you hurt me.
Right.
Because I know that's what's going to happen. Knowing that, no, it's not.
Yeah.
Well, maybe not really fully appreciating that it's not, that you are the person that's making them do this. Your actions, your behaviors are anyway. So that's kind of the first one.
Yeah.
All right. Went a little deeper on that one than I thought, but yeah, unresolved trauma.
That's good.
I may look into more of that for future stuff. Second one is this fear of abandonment. All right, because you may have, again, going back to this unresolved trauma, maybe your mother, maybe your father, they didn't hug you enough. And believe it or not, that may sound corny, but hugging your children, there is such a massive positive psychological connection that is absolutely necessary.
Oh my gosh.
And so, like I say, you can laugh and haha, you weren't hugged enough as a kid. But the truth, if you're not, that can, again, create this fear of abandonment.
Right.
Because, parents are going to ignore you. They're going to abandon you. You're on your own. And so you have this strong desire to be attached to somebody, but you're afraid.
Right. Oh, I would agree with that 1,000,000,000%. Just listening to you, and I think that's why I know I think I've talked about this before, but with Braddock's and with the girls, this is a stretch, but it's like every other word is "I love you."
Okay.
And we're always hugging on each other. And I know some people think that's weird, but I don't really care.
Well, come over here and give me a hug.
I'm not hugging you. I'm not hugging you. You and I hug. It's not weird.
I know.
No, but I and I know there's some people that have, gosh, you say I love you like 800,000 times a day. Okay, that's all right. I also hug my son and my kids multiple times a day. I tell them they're beautiful, they're smart, they're brave, they're competent, they're good looking, and they're prosperous. I tell them that all the time. And I may do that a lot. And maybe I'm doing that because I got that. And if we were on air, you'd see a big circle. And I say that, my mom did a really good job of doing her best to love us. My dad didn't say, "I love you," until he was in a hospital bed after he had a minor heart attack.
Okay.
And he was 69.
Oh, gee whiz.
So I never heard that. I got a lot of opposite things. And I'm not casting stones. I love my dad. He's not perfect. He chose to not change. He chose to not do certain things, if you will. And that hurt me because I said I love you to him while I was on the bed. I don't know which was more painful, the heart attack that he had or saying I love you. And that kind of sucks. It stings as the son, right? So
Sure.
like with Braddock's, it's complete opposite. Complete opposite. And again, I love my dad. It just there wasn't that connection. There wasn't that, hey son, I love you. I just anything else and nothing else matters. I just want you to know that I love you.
And that is, I've read a lot of other stuff, again, with my, psychology courses. And that is what they say that kids need to hear. Kids need to know this, and they need to believe it. And you need, so just say, I love you, I love you, I love you, is not the same as, I love you.
Right.
And show it and mean it.
Yeah.
Because that helps develop that attachment.
Right.
I mean, we can go back to various theorists. I've been doing a lot of work behind the scenes on attachment theory from Bowlby and others. But kids who have a strong attachment to their parents develop a lot more healthily and are less likely to have, a lot of these other unresolved trauma issues. And when you have that stronger attachment, then you don't fear being left alone. You don't fear being left behind or abandoned. And then you're less likely to develop some of these sabotaging behaviors that you're going, I'm gonna get you before you get me.
Right.
And so again, I think if we kind of look at ourselves, and it goes back to what you were saying before, self-evaluate. I did this with the divorce, and it was a big piece of what we talked about in the support group, that when you're going through your divorce, when you're going through your breakup, because there were some people that they just weren't married, but they had been long-term relationships. But when you're going through that, why did it happen? What are the things that occurred? And what was, like you said before, what was your role? Because you played a role.
Yeah.
It didn't have to be 100% you, but you were there. Yeah. You played a part, recognize it, own it, and then, okay, what could you have done differently? And if a similar situation arises, what would you do differently to avoid the same result?
Right.
And so
that would signify that you're a wise person.
Well, potentially.
Wiser, at least.
Oh, yeah. And what they're saying is that these people with this unresolved trauma, with this fear, with this lack of attachment, they don't have that. They don't have that ability. And so as a consequence, they go with what they know, and what they know is attack first.
Right.
And so we'll let you in, but we're going to have this wall that surrounds them. And when you reach that wall, now it's a counterattack.
Right.
And then as a consequence, it's almost like a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Right.
Well, they're going to leave me one day. Well, okay, I left you because you did this, and this to push me away. You didn't let me in. And so, anyway.
Sorry, it's on my mind. This episode, we're not done yet. This one needs to go out. This one needs to go wild. And I say that because that's the very nature of our podcast, is to help families, help relationships thrive, to get better, to grow and find, build something that's better. And this is so powerful because you said something, you just don't know what you don't know. That's why this one needs to go wild. And so this one helps so many people on so many different levels. Because you don't know what you don't know. And a lot of people are just products of their environment. This is what it is. I'm going to continue the legacy. No, it doesn't have to be that way. There are good traits, good things that our parents did. There are things that they didn't.
True.
You could blaze a new path. if you choose.
Yes.
And so I'm just sitting here thinking, I'm listening to you, and I'm hearing you. I'm also thinking to myself, that's just the very nature of this podcast and why we're doing it.
Mm-hmm. No, I'm with you.
But that's where there's this vicious cycle of discouragement and despair in our world because people aren't listening to our podcast.
No. No.
I know I'm kind of being, a wise ass, but at the same time, it's the reality.
Well,
People
we don't think
aren't
about
getting this information. They're not absorbing it and they're not applying it. And we're not perfect. And I guess I'm getting kind of fired up for it because I made a decision that I wasn't going to build a family like the one I came from.
And that is,
and I know that sounds harsh.
Sure, no,
because there were good things and I have good memories. Don't get me wrong.
Your 40th birthday with brother Brad.
That's awesome. It's always fun with Brad. Just plan on getting in trouble. But you know what I'm saying? Like I'm choosing to do something better, and that's okay. And I want Braddock's to do the same. I want you to look at what we've been doing here. How can I be a better husband? Not that I'm bad. I'm just saying how can I build a stronger and I don't know. I'm just kind of all over the place. Maybe
you're fine, and that's kind of why I liked this particular article was because they talk about not just some of these possibilities, but she gives some very specific things that people do, these self-sabotaging behaviors.
Yeah.
And so if you're all right, I'm going to go through some of them because
go for it.
These hit Eric's mother. And so here's some of what they are, okay? Emotionally shutting down, emotional regression, so going backwards, infidelity, perfectionism, this idea that they have to be perfect in everything they do, unrealistic expectations, passive aggressive. Eric's mother was super good at passive aggressive. People pleasing, that I gotta make you happy. You gotta love me. Overthinking things. Oh, yeah, I've done that before. I can't. We've talked about that in the past. Oversharing, TMI.
No.
Self-isolation. I'm sorry to say I've been there myself. Inability to be alone. Use of distractions, for example, obsessions, compulsions, or addictions.
Yeah.
So my alcohol consumption, my cigarette smoking, my my drug use are a distraction from the real problems.
Right.
So maybe you might even call that self-medicating.
Yeah.
Controlling or micromanaging. Oh my gosh, that was Eric's mother. Ghosting. How hard is it to respond with a simple, "Hey, I hear you. I'll text you back." I hate when people ghost me.
Why were you staring at me intently when you said that?
God,
do I ghost you?
I'm not saying that you do, but you do. No. Yeah, I just feel like Casper sometimes. Anyway, no, I'm teasing, giving you a hard time. But the last one is discarding. Discarding the good things. Discarding the positives.
Yeah.
Well, they did that because they want this in return.
Right.
Not looking at some, again, and as I go through this list, as I read it, I'm thinking Eric's mother.
Yeah.
And, it's kind of like, that might have been part of her, her issues, but it comes down to what you said moments ago. You don't have to stay here. You can break the cycle. If you're willing to recognize, if you're willing to look in the mirror,
right,
and go, you know what? Dang, I really am my own worst enemy. How can I get out of my way to have a much happier, more satisfying, more fulfilling relationship with friends, with peers, with a significant other? How can I make my life worth getting up for in the morning?
Yeah.
If you aren't sure, go find help. Contact your local professional counselor. Go see them. They will help you.
Yeah.
Recognize and give you tools and methods to help address these kinds of issues because you are loved.
Yeah.
So,
well, I don't know if you meant to do that, but you took one of my quotes. But that's exactly the what people need to hear. Don't look at other people and point out issues. You just said it a minute ago.
mm-hmm.
Go find a mirror. That's where you're going to find the person who needs to make changes. That's where you're going to find the person who's going to create that certain legacy that you want, right? You need to find a mirror.
Uh-huh.
Because I don't think a lot of people are looking at the mirror. They're looking at someone else and they're attacking that person instead of problems that they haven't dealt with.
Because that's a lot easier.
Right. It is 100% easier.
So,
anyway,
well,
I've got a mirror right there. Have you looked?
Okay. Dang, what a handsome looking feller.
Dude, that's pointed right at me. That's awesome. Thank you. I appreciate compliments.
You know what? I'm going to come over and give you a big hug.
Don't do that.
I'm
gonna ghost you. Jeez.
Oh, all right. Well,
this is a good one. I mean, it really is. I'm not trying to pat ourselves on the back. This is real talk. This is the reality of so many people's situations, and they keep that cycle going because they don't look in the mirror.
Sure.
They don't get the help that they need to break the cycle.
I was there.
That's it.
I was there, and I'm glad I'm not anymore. So,
yeah.
Well, until next time, I love you guys. I'm Rod.
I love you too. I'm Bryce. I will not ghost Rod anymore, and I can't wait to hear your story.